I now call this Committee of the Whole of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we only have one item to go over tonight for the calibration of the LZAC function of providing key considerations to the board. Am I turning it over to you? And I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize Ivy Rostenbach is with us today. She is cross-training with Brenda T. Ivy is my new administrative assistant, is doing an outstanding job and has really become a part of our team right away. So Ivy, thank you for coming tonight and cross-training, and thank you for joining our team. We're incredibly proud of the work that you do and are excited for the future with you. So thank you. Tonight we wanted to get some feedback from the rest of the board about the direction of LZAC. Dr. Beck is going to lead us through the Iowa Code, and then just kind of the history over the last 6 to 8 months to a year or so. But then we really want to set what is it exactly that the school board wants from the School Improvement Advisory Committee. From there, we will begin to lead that group going into the summer and into next year with greater clarity. As we know that our committee work is incredibly important, but the committees do not speak for the board, so this will drastically help us set the direction. So with that being said, our agenda today, we're going to review the Iowa Code, give it a little history, do some brainstorming about what is it that LCAC, what the school board would like to hear from the LCAC, and also the format to relaying information to the board. I think those are key components that will help Dr. Beck and Karen Gordon, Director Gordon, and myself lead LCAC. And I will say that those two have done a really nice job listening to the voices inside that committee. We have some momentum inside that committee. We have good committee members, community members. And so now knowing that this is exactly what the school board wants to hear from this advisory group will really send the momentum moving forward. So Dr. Beck, thank you.
Thank you. So I believe all of you have a copy of the Iowa Code on the School Improvement Advisory Committee, SIAC. We append the word local to ours. I have no idea why, but it's easier to say LZAC than SIAC, I guess, SIAC. Anyway, so basically by law, we will have a committee that makes recommendations to us. And it should consist of members representing students, parents, teachers, administrators, and representatives from the local community. And to the extent possible, committee membership should have balanced representation with regard to race, gender, national origin, and disability. Right now, we have a committee. Actually, I'll just kind of go through the ideals, and then we'll talk about where we are. The committee is supposed to make recommendations to the board to help us determine the major educational needs of the district, student learning goals of the district, long-range and annual improvement goals, such as state indicators on reading, math, and science, desired levels of student performance, progress toward meeting the goals set out that were listed in B and D, and then harassment and bullying prevention goals, programs, training, and other initiatives. And then the board is to consider recommendations from that committee to infuse character education into the educational program. So when I started on the board, we had an LZAC, but we didn't really ever hear from them. It met on occasion, and I think once in like 4 years, I saw a list of recommendations, and that kind of went into a black hole and we didn't really see it again. And so I guess 2 years ago or so, we kind of revitalized this committee. And Director Snyder, Jamie Snyder, when he was serving on the board, and I were the two people who began attending as board members. And then Director Gordon took over when she was elected. And we work with John Border, the community outreach person, and Jabari Woods from HR and Superintendent Schneckloth to figure out sort of what's going to happen at each meeting. And in the past, it's been really hard to get people to attend regularly. Initially, they were once a month. Many times we would have like 2 or 3 people. They get canceled frequently. Not a lot of progress has gotten made historically. And I'd say over the last year, we've made pretty good strides in establishing a more regular schedule with more better articulated expectations. We use the Schneckloth agenda format now with for note taking and planning. Though Director Gordon and I both have daytime commitments, it's been a little hard for us to help with the agenda planning, but it gets done. And we've got a good core of, I'd say, 8 people or so that are pretty much at every meeting, representing a decent cross-section. I'm just looking over a list. Our meeting from December of 2022 was very well attended. And we typically will have, around 8 to 10 people representing various community programs, a couple of people involved in the justice system. So one of our juvenile court officers, John Yoakum, who we've heard from about the Student Build Home program. He runs that, and he's a realtor in the area. A guest teacher and parent, a couple people from, say, St. Ambrose, a couple of other local organizations that I don't always catch where people are from. And the vast majority are associated with an organization in some way. We've got one woman who is a grandparent / parent of district students, and then another woman who is does guest teaching and has her kids. She's got 2 left in the district still. And so the vast majority are associated with some sort of community organization in some way. Let's see. So we've kind of had a few good meetings where we've talked about PBIS, we've talked about the CRVP program, Crisis Response and Violence Prevention. We have talked about what happens when students violate policies. We had a really good meeting in December about the long-range facilities plan, where after we voted to close 3 buildings, and how the community thought we should handle that. So we had a lot of considerations from them for how to do that. Our most recent meeting was on bullying and harassment, what we're doing to prevent bullying and harassment, I should say. And that one was led by Courtney Olson and a couple members of her team. Let's see, Corey Vanderwally was there, and for some reason I can't find the page where I wrote everything down. One of the other principals from, yes, thank you.
Kristen Spear Huggins. I don't know what she's going by now.
From Wood.
Yes.
Yes,
I
that's
think
right.
Was it just the 2 of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then John Border and Jabari. So that was our most recent one. And basically the way we've been running these now is whatever the topic is, we sort of lay it out. We have administrators who are informed if that's, for example, this was the bullying and harassment prevention one, to sort of set the stage. Where are we? What is the district doing at this point? They often show the same types of presentations or bits of the presentations that we get as board members to the community. And then the next thing is usually to ask for suggestions for how to improve what we're doing, how to reach people in the community that we may not be reaching, and all sorts of other what we've been calling key considerations. So I would say the last couple meetings have been really productive in that way, coming away with lists of things that people can recommend or have recommended to us. What we need to do now is make sure that we are keeping the attendance up, meeting on somewhat regular basis rather than sort of letting things fall through the cracks, and then taking advantage of the fact that we do have this group of people. I will say, looking through the list of people they suggest for this committee, we don't have any students on it. And so, but we do have a pretty good slice in terms of race, gender, distribution. I don't know about national origin and disability. We don't really, it's not something that has really come up. What we have not talked about really specifically are educational needs, specific student learning goals, what the community thinks should be desired levels of achieving those goals, and other things like that. So you guys hear a report from us now, although we don't read out all of the bits and pieces that people suggest. And then that's kind of where we are, where we've been and where we are. So we've definitely improved in the last year, but we have a ways to go before I would say we're really taking full advantage of this committee.
Director Gordon, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't know if this, I guess one thing that I think that in LCAC we need to formulate is a number of actual key considerations so that when we do bring the information back to the board, we know exactly what things we're relaying. Because sometimes that kind of, like what we discuss and what we cover gets a little bit broad, but to pare it back down so we have bullet points or whatever, I think that would be helpful. But other than that, no, I don't have anything to add.
So I would say to add to those comments, we are organically have evolved in the way that Dr. Beck described. We are always bringing something that the board has already set as a priority to LCAC, and then any feedback that we gain, we use that to move forward to help us make our decisions as an administrative team. And so that's kind of how we've been utilizing that feedback. And then our board of directors members have been reporting, this is the feedback that was given, this is what we discussed and talked about. So right now, what we would like, and that wonderful job stating where we've been and where we're going and what it is. So now our next bullet is what's the future moving forward, brainstorming. Kind of want to turn it back over to you, President Goza, for the, what is it that the board would like to hear about from feedback, input from LCAC, and then in what format relaying that information. And I will make sure to capture copious notes.
I would just add to that also, if the board has specific not types of people, but constituents in the community that they think should be included in this, that we should reach out to, that would also be something to think about.
Director Potts.
When I was board president, I attended LISIAC for a year. And it was the same sort of thing. We even tried to feed people to get them to come. But it's an odd relationship because the board is wanting feedback on educational programming and procedures and curriculum, and this committee is made up of mostly people who don't have children in the school. So they don't have an experiential base to draw upon. They have no prior experience really to draw upon. And so we spend our time educating them on these things. And then we say, so give us some feedback. Well, all the feedback they can give us is what we've just told them. So it's kind of it's really sort of an awkward relationship. I felt it was kind of an awkward relationship. You'd go to the meeting and they'd say, well, what's new? What's going on? You'd fill them in on what the board is doing, and they ask a question or two, and you'd answer the question, and they were fine. I mean, they've never had a focused task. They're an advisory committee whose advice is contingent upon the information we give them to then give us advice, which is pretty circular. And I when I look on the list of things, many of these things we don't need to have a committee to tell us that the goal is proficiency, okay, grade level performance, okay. So I mean, most of these is okay. The state's already told us what all that is. The one item on here, is what is it? Character education. Okay, I don't know if we have a program in our buildings or we don't have doing character education. I don't know. Perhaps there's a charge for them. I'm done talking.
Director Hayes.
Is there anyone from NAACP on LZAC? I know with the meetings that we used to have, a lot of those questions that came up seems like could be addressed if a member was coming to the meetings and would also be able to provide some feedback.
We do. I'm just not sure if that person's integrated into any of the structures to report back out. But I believe Sherwin is a regular attendee, but I'm not sure if he's connected to any of the committees, like the educational committee.
Yeah. He comes to all the meetings, but I don't know if he's. Yeah. Yeah. He comes more as a representative of community outreach rather than, he's not there as a representative of the NAACP. At least he's never indicated that, so.
And I want to circle back to Bruce's point. That's exactly what we're trying to stop. Our members of LZAC, I would say over the last 4 or 5 months, we're asking their input and we are using their input. And we're doing it in safe places to where it's not going to step on the board's toes, and it is something that's already board approved. We've been given the direction to work on bullying inside of our district, so we know that it's a safe thing to share. Do you have any input? The members on LCAC are members of places that have the potential to assist. Family Resources, Vera French. So they also are connected in the community to connect organizations and help us move things forward. I agree that there should be more parent voice on that. I think that's a great suggestion. I wrote that down. Getting key concepts. So we believe if the purpose is driven by the school board, that these that the meetings will be very meaningful, and they'll see what they're recommending show up in board practice. I think, sorry about that. I think that's exactly what we're asking for. Topics that the board would like feedback, and how would you like to receive that feedback? So that's a really good point, Bruce, and that's exactly what we're trying to get at. The why and the purpose.
And I would say the long-range facilities plan was probably one of the most productive meetings because it didn't require all that prior education. I mean, we could say, well, we're closing these schools, but everybody understands what that means, right? And so when they gave us feedback, it was good feedback. And a lot of it was stuff that we had also suggested, but that's okay. But I agree, when it comes to the other topics, you know, it ends up being a little bit circular there.
Director Poston?
When you look at, what we've got listed here, there's a number of topics, and I think a committee like this maybe should be more focused on one or two items. And so what first comes to my mind is our issue with attendance in the schools. And maybe this might be a group of people that can, they don't need a lot of background on it. It's just, we've got to improve our attendance. So would they have any suggestions on how we could go about that? What ideas they might have on that. And so it might be better just to focus on one or two items instead of trying to look at a number of different things.
Director Hayes?
One thing that I would like to see too is we're all here for student achievement, obviously. I know in the high schools, they have the help numbers on the pop machines if you need help tutoring or something. But some they think they know it all and feel that they really don't need to go for that tutoring, that extra help. I would like some type of suggestions on other things that we could do to, if you need the extra help, how can we encourage that without, or doing more than just putting the numbers up there and the numbers aren't utilized like they should? If, you fall below whatever, you need to do this or something to encourage that additional assistance rather than waiting to the 12th hour. Oh, you're not where you need to be. I would say high school, junior high. We've increased it decreased it from the third grade mandate down to K, maybe something for the middle school and high schools to encourage them to stay on track rather than more than just putting the number out there and they may or may not look at it. What can we do to encourage it and in some cases almost mandate it?
Director Klein Jerome?
Do you have any teachers on that? And I don't mean guest teachers, I mean teachers who are, and I think that would be a valuable people to be on that committee because they don't really need to be explained all this stuff and they have a different perspective. And I also think an idea is how do we get more people connected, involved in schools? Like Madison has lunch buddies. There's somebody coming in, making a connection to a kid. Reading buddies. Do we have the same kind of thing in junior high, high school? How do we used to have a big push for business partners. Every school had at least one or two business partners, and their employees really stepped up and came in and helped? Is there, what's the committee thoughts on how to get people involved? When I was at McKinley, American Water Company was our business partner. They were in the school all the time, helping with everything from in the classroom to fun nights and that kind of thing. So there's ways, but I don't know how you pull people in.
I can actually answer that. We have the STARS mentorship program, which Deb Stevenson handles, and she's in charge of getting volunteers, and I think haven't been able to get as many volunteers. But we actually do have a full-time employee that does that.
So we need to figure out a way to get people to sign up and do it.
Yeah. Does anyone else Director Poston?
Just to follow up, Karen brings up a good point. If there's a way that we can get more community involvement, whether it is a business or whatever, to be like a sponsor for a particular building, and then try to get volunteers to get involved, and then and maybe you'd start more like with the elementaries. But then another thing that I think would be beneficial to the school and to the community, when the high schools put on plays and musicals and that, I think maybe we need to do a better job of pushing out to the community to get senior citizens, get them to come to the plays and that sort of thing, and get involvement that way, so they see these kids and they see what they're doing in school, and get more involvement that way. So whether it's a sponsorship from a company, I'm trying to remember. Principal Schultz had mentioned they have a sponsor, the company on Hickory Grove Road, and Cobham. They don't they sponsor at Jefferson, and so they have volunteers involved there. Well, if we had something like that at each of the elementaries, and this might be the committee to spearhead that, and try to go out and find those people or those businesses that could get involved with the buildings.
Does anyone else have anything? Oh,
Just another thing too is maybe if this committee could look at, for me, students aren't getting involved enough in extracurricular activities. It just there's so many opportunities there, where it's band, chorus, sports, or whatever, but these kids need to get involved. They need to get involved with learning teamwork, and doing things beyond the classroom. Sometimes that can be even more beneficial. To me, that is critical for those students to get more involved, because when you look at the number of kids that you go to a band program or orchestra concert or whatever, there just is not as many kids involved in those programs anymore.
Does anyone have anything else? I know I gotta let everybody go, and then I would go. Does anyone have anything? I like the what Director Poston was talking about, narrowing it down so it's a little easier to focus. I mean, I could see maybe like at the beginning of the year, LZAC gets together and figures out some topics that they would like to discuss, and then that gets brought to the board, and the board can narrow that more down on what our focus is for that year, and then we can kind of go from there. My other question is on, I'm gonna try to say this the right way because I don't want anybody to get salty about it, but sometimes people go to meetings to go to meetings. Who do they report out to, the folks that come to this? Because essentially we want you to be our voice in the community, and if you come to a meeting and you don't go out and report to anybody, well, what's the point of having you on that committee? Because you're supposed to be our voice putting this through, that like whether it's long range facilities plan, when people are asking questions, those people that are on that committee should be able to answer that too, and not just sit there in the background. They should be at the forefront promoting that stuff too. So I agree with Director Hayes, maybe some of the constituency groups like LULAC and NAACP are on that, because then they can promote that out through their memberships and things like that. And I think it would be nice if we can get some folks from not just Davenport, but we do have Buffalo, Bluegrass, and Walcott to make sure that they have a voice on it as well. And it sounds like the meetings are well attended, but that's all fine and good. Again, you can come to a meeting, but if you don't go out and do the work too, then it's just us. And we also, I see it as like when we did the long range facilities plan, how to get our message out on how we're doing it. I mean, we put it in the paper, social media, and everything else, and people are still saying, well, I didn't know anything about it. I don't know how you don't. You live under a rock, because it was everywhere. TV, everything. But it was a good way for us to engage people and put all that stuff out. And I think the LZAC is kind of that buffer to do the community engagement and then bring the things to the board. But I do agree. I think if it could get focused in, and maybe it's the attendance part, because there are a lot of community partners that could help with that. Whether it's driving by and making sure the kid's up, because mom or dad might be coming off a third shift and don't get home in time, and things like, it takes a village to raise kids and stuff. And if you talk to our attorneys, we're only supposed to educate them, not do everything else, but we need them in the building to educate them. But there's just some ideas that I was thinking on, but I do think maybe if the LZAC committee figures out the topics that they want to bring, and then the board can kind of go from there, because then we kind of know what the mindset is of the folks that are on that committee, and then the board can at a meeting do a discussion on, and then kind of hone it in. So, and maybe it's attendance is our focus at this point, and then we change to something else if we get that corrected. I mean, I don't think we ever will, but I can see some things like that. Director Potts.
I wonder if, a successful functioning committee of people is much more effective when they have selected their targets or their tasks or their charges. And perhaps what we should consider doing is giving them a menu and say, you guys, these are the, well, we know you can't do all of this. What do you want to concentrate on? What do you want to put your time, energy, and effort into? And I think then you at least you have the chance of having a lot more buy-in in the goal, because they'll, it's like when you're a principal, you you always had to convince the staff that it was their idea in the first place. I mean, that's just what you do, because then it's their idea. Same thing with this committee. I think that's just human nature and people dynamics.
So Bruce, are you thinking in terms of like setting meetings for like 6 months or a year or something, and saying, here's a bunch of things that the board needs to hear or wants to hear your feedback on? What do you guys think you can? Yeah.
See, right now we bring the agenda because otherwise you just sit there and look at one another.
Oh, they get sandwiches now too.
Yeah. See, okay, but I mean, it's give them some ownership in the whole process by saying the board met, and look, we need some help with attendance. We need some help with citizenship education. We need some help with extracurricular activity, involvement of kids in extracurricular activities. We need some help with whatever some of the other items we've discussed. That talk about this stuff. Let's hash this out and say as this group, where are our talents? What on this list do we think we could, one, is important to us, and two, we have the talent and the people to put together an effective plan and make some recommendations to the board or to the administration. Hey, let's go do this.
I'm gonna piggyback on that. I think one of the first things you guys could do is do a wheel of influence chart. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but each person that's on that committee, you draw out a circle with their name in it, and then you have little ears coming off with other circles on all the people that they touch, right? And then who those people touch, and that's your wheel of influence. Because then it'll help you know when there's certain particular things who you can go to. And I think sometimes when people think, and it also helps them understand that we need them promoting this to their circle of influence, right?
That's definitely one thing that has improved a little is we end meetings with, okay, now go share this information with your people. But I like that idea of laying it out a little bit more so people know, because as Bruce said, that if you have a specific task and you know what you're supposed to be doing, you're more likely to get it done, right? It's kind of the focus part of it, rather than just share all this information. I'm supposed to talk to these people about this topic.
So, if I may, I think there's 4 clear topics that the board has shared tonight. The first one being character education, climate, culture, civics, whatever that direction may be, attendance, and then engagement on 2 levels, student engagement and then community engagement, whether it be businesses, partnerships, things of that nature. Those are to keep, and I also heard the board say, keep it at a manageable tasks. So this, I think that there's a year's worth of advising to be done in just those tasks, and they could set which one they want to go at first. Does that sound appropriate as a clear direction for LZAC? Mm-hmm. With the ability to bring under the direction of Karen, Allison, myself, to brainstorm things that are in the board's purview to bring back to the board to say, what about this one as well? Because so that kind of hits the direction. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, creating a goal for LCAC that they help carry the message back into the sections of their community. We also, the feedback that I heard was that we also need to increase membership to broaden the cross section of our community by highlighting our organizations, increasing the amount of education relevance by having teachers, parents, in that arena. Does that sound like a synopsis of that? Anything else to add to that?
Don't forget the farmers.
Oh,
Prime one for you right there.
Can we have the pigs sponsor a building?
Apparently, we're sending a pig to Louisiana. I don't know if you saw that the governor lost a bet with the governor of Louisiana. I think the last agenda item that we have is in terms of the information flowing from LCAC to the board, what format would the board like to receive the information?
The committees, I would think maybe if they had wrapped up some recommendations on a specific topic, it might be appropriate to have some members of the LISIAC committee do during on presentations, come in and do a little dog and pony show, present their stuff.
For stuff that's in progress, like what would be the best way for us to inform you all of what we're doing?
I think we already have committee, parts on the agenda, so you could report it at there. If it gets to a point where like they feel like they finished a task and they need to come in and give us a presentation, that's okay. But otherwise, I think during the committee reports, that keeps us informed. I also would suggest that you reach out for teachers to DEA, because they have a group they can carry this message to. They have meetings once a month. They have the ability to, reach a wide range of people. Just a suggestion.
Would you, the superintendent, be able to maybe have each building principal put an email out to parents that we would be looking for parents on this? I mean, even if you throw it out to everybody, not everybody's gonna do it, but at least that way we can get some parents too. I think the format of giving the committee reports would be great. Hey, the committee, we went over this, and then everybody left and they were gonna go out and spread the word or whatever.
I have one question for you guys. What do you guys think about having students involved? And yes or no, what ages? Is it necessary?
I think it's nice. It's a nice theory, but we have difficulty having students involved at our school board meetings. So I mean, if Mrs. Fezziwig, my favorite Mrs. Fezziwig, is on the committee and her son's a junior and he wants to come along, okay. But I'm not sure I'm not sure how much greater luck we would have on having consistent attendance of some students for a LISIAC when we have a hard time school board.
I would not be opposed to that. I would even go down. I think you'd probably get more engagement from junior high kids, so they're not as heavily committed in extracurriculars. And like Bruce said, but all of our student board members are in drama, sports, and everything else, so it's kind of hard. So I definitely, especially when you're a senior, you want to go all out and get everything done.
And a junior high school kid has to be brought here by somebody.
See?
I think I know one that I can rope into at least the next couple meetings. No, I was thinking mine. On that note, actually, I don't know how relevant this is, but I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity for sort of once in a blue moon student LZAC, like just a way of asking students for their feedback on some of these things. I mean, it could be a survey, it could be, whatever, but like transitioning schools, buildings closing, it'd be interesting to hear what the kids think would make it easier for them, right? And
Isn't that the leadership teams that we have
that's what
now?
okay.
So, I mean,
So we're actually we are doing that.
we wouldn't need to recreate another.
No,
group.
we don't. Okay.
So what I've heard is the board would like to be regularly updated through the same vehicles that we use, committee reports, presentations. I could also see it would be appropriate to do Friday reports, things of that nature. So all of those would be appropriate. The board is not opposed to anything like that. So if we were to do a presentation to see it ahead of time, put it in our normal cadence, put a presentation together, connect those two. Does that sound like a good answer to that final question? I think that gives us all of the feedback that we need and an excellent direction for the upcoming school year, to finish this school year and the upcoming school year. Do you guys have anything else to add? Director Gordon, Director Beck? Very incredibly helpful for us to set the direction, and we will continue to serve the board in this committee. It's a great committee, so thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. I know this was kind of a short meeting, but it was really helpful to have a face-to-face discussion, even though it wasn't super lengthy. No, I just meant like sometimes people are like, I had to come to a meeting for this, Oh, good point.
Director Gordon, you don't have anything, you haven't really chimed in, so I just wanted to make sure you had the opportunity. Okay. All right, Director Potts, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, meeting adjourned.